Hey everyone, how's it going? Forrest here, again with another installment of my complete analysis of all of JS Bach's chorale harmonizations. Today we have a short chorale, nun sich geendet hat, which translates to, well, the day has ended. Really nothing too remarkable about this chorale. It's a short one, not too much to write home about. Let's hop right into the analysis. So we have no key signature. We start off on A minor. We end on A major. So I reckon the overall tonality of this chorale is A minor, despite our first cadence being an imperfect authentic cadence in the key of C major. So we start things off with our tonic, passing tone in the bass, and then we get C, C, E, and A, which is just taking our tonic triad and putting it in first inversion. No need to reiterate the Roman numeral. Passing tone in the bass, and then we have G sharp, B, E, and B. This A is an accented non-chord tone that would make this 5-6, E major over G sharp, which is our dominant. And that takes us to a bit of an ambiguous chord here. We have a 7-6 suspension over the bass here, A, F, and C, which would make this E an accented non-chord tone as well. That would make this F major over A, so a bit of a substitute for A minor. We know that A minor is where our ear is expected to go, but Bach switches it up on us here, and I think it coincides with our modulation to C major, where 6-6, F major over A, turns into 4-6, and then that takes us to E, G, G, and C, which is now our new tonic, C major in first inversion. C is a chord tone, so we don't need to mark it. That takes us to F, C, A, and D. It's D minor 7 over F. We know that Bach loves 2-6-5 chords, especially in cadential contexts. B is a non-chord tone. A is a chord tone, so we don't have to mark it. We then get G, B, G, and D, which is our 5 chord, G major, and that goes to C major. C, C, G, and E. Tonic triad, root position. Next phrase ends in a half cadence back in the key of A minor. I think we pretty much modulate straight out the gate here. We have C, C, G, and E. No need to reanalyze in C major, but in the key of A minor we have a 3 chord here. That takes us to D7 over F sharp. We have F sharp, C, A, and D, which is a byproduct of the melodic minor scale. We have F sharp, G sharp, and A here in the bass, so this isn't a secondary dominant. This is a byproduct of spelling using that raised 6th scale degree in the key of A minor. That takes us to E major over G sharp, B, E, and E, which is 5-6, and that takes us to A minor, A, B, E, and C, this B being a 9/8 suspension over the bass, but in typical Bach fashion we see Bach switch up the bass by the time we get to the longer resolution of the suspension here, unlike the shorter resolutions of these shorter suspensions here. So the 1 chord turns into a 1-6 chord here by the time we get to the resolution C, A, E, and C. Another passing tone here in the bass before we get a suspended half cadence here with 5, E, G sharp, E, and B. Very common to see 4-3 suspensions over the bass, especially with root position dominant triads. So the next phrase ends in another half cadence in the key of A minor. We start off with another E major chord, G sharp, E, B, and E, such as taking our 5 chord and inverting it, so we just can change the figured bass, no need to reiterate the Roman numeral. And then we resolve to our tonic A minor. We have A, E, A. This B is a 9/8 suspension over the bass, and C. That takes us to E major again. E, E, G sharp, and B. That's our 5 chord in root position. Passing 7th in the bass, and that takes us to C, E, A, and C, with the passing 7th in the alto. That's A minor in first inversion, 1-6. That takes us to D minor, D, D, F, and A, which is our 4 chord. A little passing 7th in the bass as well before we get B, D, F, and G sharp. Now, I think we can analyze this chord in a couple of different ways here. I think we have a bit of sort of like a false suspension here, because if we look at how the bass resolves, this would be like a 5/4 suspension. Granted, it's a diminished fifth to what would have been a perfect fourth, but it actually turns into a unison. So I think there's an argument to be made that this could be a G sharp fully diminished 7th over B, which would be 7/6/5. Or if you look at what's happening on the end of the beat as the chord, because we have two similar dominant ideas happening, we have E major and root position. So whether this is 7/6/5 or 5, that's up for you to decide. I don't think this is a subdivided 7 to 5 progression though, because that's really just playing with the idea of these two chords not only occupying the same role, but having similar pitch content as well. Regardless, the dominant, however you analyze it, resolves to our tonic, C, C, E, and A, which is 1/6. And on the end of the beat, it's a little interesting. A is a chord tone, so we don't have to mark it, but F sharp creates another sort of melodic minor fragment here going into the alto. But with this F sharp here, we do get a F sharp diminished triad over A, which is 6/6. That serves sort of as a predominant here. That takes us to E major, E, B, G sharp, and B. It's our 5 chord root position. And our last phrase ends in a perfect authentic cadence like we would expect in the key of the tonic. The phrase starts off with a resolution of our half cadence. We have C, A, and E. That's 1/6, A minor over C. Then we have a 7/6 suspension over the bass here. We have B, D, G sharp, and D, which is 7/6. And if you've watched my videos in the past, you've seen this progression before. If we see 1/6 going to 7/6, we typically know what's on the other side of it. It's usually a root position 1 chord. A, E, A, and C. Tonic triad, root position. The retrograde and the forward version of this progression is seen all the time in Bach. It's a very common pattern. That takes us to D, F, A, and B. B minor 7 flat 5 over D. We know that Bach loves 2/6/5 chords, especially in cadential contexts. D is a chord tone, so we don't have to mark it, and we would expect this to go to some type of 5 chord, which it does. E, B, G sharp carried from earlier in the measure, and then B again, which is E major. That's our 5 chord. E is a chord tone, so we don't have to mark it. D is a little passing 7th here in the tenor, and B is a chord tone, so we don't have to mark it. And that resolves to A major. That picardy third is very typical in minor chorale endings. I think it just has to do with Bach's relationship with major chords and how they have more of a final impact at the end of the chorale, but it could also be that he wants to end on a more uplifting note. It could just be a conventional thing. I don't know, it's mostly speculative, but regardless, it's a common thing that we see at the end of a lot of chorales, minor chorales more specifically. A, C sharp, E, and A. Tonic triad, major tonic triad in root position. And that's today's analysis. Really not any big takeaways from this chorale as far as, like, deviations or stylistic variety that I tend to end the videos with. So I think I'm just going to cap this video off here and keep the analysis short. If you're interested in following me along on the journey to analyze all of Bach's chorale harmonizations, feel free to subscribe to the channel. You can hit the notification icon and like the video as well if you enjoyed the content. Thank you so much for watching the video and supporting the channel by doing so. I look forward to tomorrow's analysis, and I hope you take care.